Hello from Nether Springs in front of the storytelling tree. And one of the stories that this beautiful tree has to tell us is about being resilient in the midst of pestilence and disease. Because this is an elm tree, and it's probably a wych elm, and it has survived the Dutch elm disease, and it's still standing. And people who know have estimated it's about 200 years old. So we're finding hope and strength from Christ in these times, from one another, and from examples of living things such as this, who've lived through hard times before. We're also aware here at Nether Springs that we have a wonderful gift to give to you in this time, which is the Monastic Rhythm of the day. And one of you has emailed me to say that they've had to self-quarantine in the States, but have decided to go, not the full Monty, but the full monastic. And we can encourage such a full-on monastic experience if you want to. We'll post here the monastic rhythm that we keep at Nether Springs. And even though as of this afternoon we're going to be closing to guests, there will be a small team, we believe, remaining that will keep the fourfold office of morning, midday, and evening prayer, and also some other ways of keeping rhythm. So we know from St. Aidan, who chose of all of his places to build his monastic school and to live the monastic life, Lindisfarne, Holy Island, precisely because of the ebb and flow of the tides. And we like to think of ebb and flow as the tide sisters who guide us on our way. So just as a very basic principle, if you're indoors or inside or avoiding contact with other humans for a while, to think about what ebb and flow looks like for you in this new context. And if you think about them as sisters greeting you as the tide turns throughout the day, what are the things that are going to make your life have ebb and flow in it in this different context? Also, even thinking about St. Francis and thinking of brother sun and sister moon, it might be that you let your ebb and flows connect more with the natural world, even greeting each new day with the rising of brother sun, and greeting each new night with the rising of sister moon. So those are some very basic thoughts to think about, but also one of the things that we talk about here with our monastic rhythm is our 5 pillars of community life. Not the 4 pillars, which we know as Sarah, Ed, Zoe, and Isaac, but the 5 pillars, which we know as worship, work, study, solitude, and community. So when we live the monastic rhythm at Nether Springs, we think there's an element of each of these 5 things in every day. Worship, this is our daily office, as well as Pustinia time, perhaps chapel time, communion, etc. But it's that way of that first thing we say in morning prayer every day. Who is it that you seek? We seek the Lord our God. One of the things that struck me, even though taking communion has been different and will be different in these days, in the Eucharistic prayer, when the president says, lift up your hearts, and we say, we lift them up to the Lord, that there's something, even when there's a heaviness, that we lift up our hearts again, and we choose to seek God as the one thing necessary. This is our worship. It also might be that while you're worshiping, perhaps more in a home context or a more solitary context, you get to explore CDP more, not only with the daily office, but other liturgies that are available through that. It could also be that you're missing praying with other people, so you might choose to put the CD on to hear Celtic daily prayer being prayed with others, or the music. Or it could be that you just want to dance around your house in unabandoned worship. I like dancing. Not all of you will. That won't be for everyone. But it might be that you find your own home ways to have worship, as well as worshiping outdoors. The other next thing we talk about from worship is work. And again, here at Nether Springs, with the usual ministry of hospitality, there's plenty of manual work to be done. Vegetables to be chopped, logs to be split, cups of tea to be made, all of that. And of course that ministry of hospitality will be, if not ended, at least redirected for this time. But I do think, in one of my own learnings of becoming a more grounded human being through the community, is it's important to use your hands every day to touch the earth, to make something, to do something physically that makes a difference. So it could be that you're blessing God in the ordinary by doing your housework, by digging up weeds or planting seedlings. But do try to do something every day. That's what we've learned, that has an element of manual work in it, and do it with a heart turned toward God, saying that nothing we do is apart from the activity of God. Even the loo brush is a holy tool if done with our hearts turned towards God. But also there's inner work, and I think that this might be an opportunity for us to go on the inner pilgrimage a bit more in these days. Our wisdom about that is to not make it the only thing that you do, and do it before you go in. Light a candle of the Spirit as you go down into the dark places of your own soul, or the hidden places. But do go, and do consider it part of your work if you want to, the ebb and flows, some things that you've been afraid to look at, or afraid to, or just haven't made the time to do. It might be that in these times we find some richer treasures, deeper treasures in ourselves and in one another. Worship, work, study. This is a wonderful time to read a book that's been on your bookshelf that you haven't, maybe you've read all the books on your bookshelf. I haven't. But maybe it's a time to go to those, or return to favorite books, to explore books that will open you up to experiences beyond your own comfort zone, to hear stories of people who are different from you. Maybe there's a different way of studying that you're going to do, audio books or online courses, something to deepen your own thought life, as it were. But also you might be studying other things as well. I'm just going to get one of my favorite tools. This. So even if you can only go in your own front garden, if you have any kind of magnifying glass, you could go and just study something and be amazed and in awe and take pleasure in that. I have found a little branch from this elm tree behind me. It's actually right now this tree is in full blossom. There's a wonderful word in the Finnan readings for today, March 19th, about buds in our community and blossoms. But I've already spent some time today just looking at a witch elm blossom under a magnifying glass and looking at the buds from this as well. And this is study. And it brings joy, I think, as well. So that might be part of your monastic rhythm. You'll find other ways as well. But worship, work, study, solitude. This is, as I said, cell time, perhaps, and all of our teaching, all of our rich resources to talk about the cell, the heart alone with God. This might be a time to lean into that. We have a wonderful quote from, I'll just get it to make sure I say it right, from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, which says, "Let the one who cannot be alone beware of community. Let the one who is not in community beware of being alone." So our fifth pillar is community, and solitude and community go together. I think this is really important for us to remember right now. Each requires the other. Henry Nouwen says, it says the center and circumference of a circle. So though we are thinking about self-isolating, and we're using that expression, aren't we? Self-isolating. Please do not use that word, even if you're removing yourself from other people. I invite you to say, I'm connecting in a different way in this time. Because we are always connected. We are always connected. And we have learned this in community as a mainly network dispersed community. We are connected across the miles. We are connected even if we're geographically next door to each other, but we're not seeing each other. We are still connected. And so I'm reminded, one of my favorite things, Terry Ansell, a companion down in Worcestershire, told me about this little garden shed he goes to right down in the bottom of the garden. And he says, I go alone and I pray Celtic daily prayer, and I know I'm connected to companions all around the world, alone in my little shed at the bottom of the garden. And I think we can bear that sentiment in mind as we join together in prayer, as we keep our rhythms. It's like thousands of tiny little underground fibers that connect us. It is real, and I think more than ever we draw on these and think of ourselves in community, even if we're more on the solitude side of things in these times. I think instead of thinking as well about going back to normal, we will lean into new ways of being. This is an opportunity, and I invite you to embrace monastic rhythm and whatever that might look like for you, wherever you are right now. Godspeed. Bye.